I'm going to keep my video off because my internet isn't that great. And I'm going to have to share the screen too.
Okay, got it.
Good afternoon, all.
Hey, Ed.
Good afternoon.
Are you all enjoying President's Day?
Well, except for having to go to this, it's been fun.
Yeah. I got to go on a hike with my wife this morning.
Ooh, where
And
to?
Just around in the area near my son's, and we got a little over 5 miles in.
Wow.
So it was very pleasant.
Every time I get the urge to exercise, I lie down until it passes.
Yep, that's a good approach too.
It's also not true, but it's a good line.
Yeah, I thought you were the soccer player.
Yep, playing tonight against a bunch of 25 to 35-year-olds. It's really, I feel much like the Christians did in the Colosseum, as the tigers come racing towards me as I'm stationary as they fly by me.
Yeah, 25 to 30-year-olds are a little bit faster than older people.
Yeah, that's why I play in the goal, so I don't have to move that. I still have, thank goodness, reflexes and
Yep.
a wide butt, so I can stop some of the shots. But as far as keeping up with them in a sprint, not even worth starting.
Understood.
So who else might we be expecting for this afternoon's seance?
And we're waiting for Catherine.
Catherine, okay.
You can get going if you want. You guys, all three of you had looked at it together, right? So she can catch
right.
up, I guess.
I think that's right. So Inga, why don't you drive?
Okay.
So can you at least orient me, like who is red, who added for the landfill, who is, like, for instance, put forth CUPF1? How does all this play out?
Red is me. Blue
Red?
is the, sorry, what?
No, go ahead. So you said red is you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it.
Blue is the subcommittee. And there's purple too. Is that you, Jeff?
That's me.
No,
Yeah, it is.
that's you, the purple? Okay.
Okay, and then the stuff in black is where we last left off as a group, then I'm assuming, because that's all that's left.
Can you guys, I'm trying to get this larger. Can you see it well enough?
Okay.
I
fine.
can.
Yes.
Okay. It's not letting me increase the size, so this is the document Jeff reviewed that was sent out Friday, and then I incorporated most of what of the new stuff that Ed sent out this morning. There was one condition that Jeff had changed so that Ed's just changes didn't make sense anymore. And then I added some stuff as well. As you can see, it's in the red. So I added at the top, or currently it said the review basically is overarching key findings on land use decisions. And I added for the landfill because that's what the committee was reviewing, is the landfill conditions, not general conditions that the county imposed on other land uses. So I added for the landfill there.
Any objections to that?
There seems to have been a distinction made later of that power generation and quarry were not in the scope. How do we make sure that, I mean, we reviewed more than just the landfill. We reviewed the quarry stuff, we reviewed the power generation stuff.
And accessory uses.
Which include the quarry and
Well, the
power
quarry
gen-
isn't a landfill accessory use. It's its own use.
but
Right.
The
it's a
power
docu-
certainly is.
yeah. But it's a document that was provided that was Republic's application, and we reviewed it. So how do you get it in there?
Well, it's string cited. I mean, it's for the landfill, the quarry, and whatever that other thing you mentioned was the power plant or something,
Power generation.
power generation. Okay, are we good with that, folks?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So, the information here on F1, it looks like the sub put that forward and Jeff had no comments on it. So I'm assuming that's good to go. Jeff?
Which one are we talking about?
F1?
Yeah, that's fine.
So why don't you go in, please, and like where we added for the landfill, quarry, et cetera, and this F1, just accept all that stuff.
I accepted 2 as well. All right, well, let's look at 2 before I accept everything.
Right.
It knocked me out and I hadn't saved it, so that's why I'm going to be saving it constantly now. So just so you know.
Okay. Okay. So this one, F2, so we agree on F1, F2, Jeff disagrees.
Guess you don't need to see yourself. So, yeah. Public disagrees. The MOU and Lux are evidence that the county considered the landfill to be in compliance at those points in time and have been part of the land decisional history with regard to the landfill. They are relevant to the question of compliance and should be I think you meant should not be discounted.
There's a very bad missing word there. As you can
Yes,
see,
should
I was
not
doing
be
a flavor
discounted.
down.
I know I didn't put that in there simply because it wasn't a document that reviewed. This is a work product of the legal committee. It wasn't a document provided by the county for the subcommittee review. So I don't see how it has any relevance. I mean, we didn't look at Lux. The Lux wasn't even available until what, Wednesday of last week. This is, I know what you're trying to do, but it's not, I don't think it's relevant.
Well, the question that you're trying to answer is whether or not the landfill has remained in compliance with the conditions of approval. And we all know that particularly with the earlier land use decisions, the public record is not very good. So
I don't think I agree with that, your statement on what we're trying to do. We were trying to review the documents, the historical documents that were given to us by the county. We pointed out in the first one that there may be some things that supersede it. And we even, I think, pointed to a 1998 memo or something that had volumes. So we've pointed to things, but we didn't evaluate any of those.
So, couple things. I don't want to use F2 as a surrogate for the whole dispute on the MOU. I think that's the subject of a memorandum of a evolving memo on the MOU that hopefully will land itself in the next two or 3 days. I think this statement is designed, I believe, to say what you didn't review, nothing
Right.
more. It has no it's just saying what you reviewed, right, Ed?
Yes,
That's
it's
the
just
whole
putting
purpose
the
of it.
boundaries on it. It's just putting the
Right.
boundaries on what we did.
Right. I also am not sure it's fair to say we're not included in the review because we have spent a fair amount of time, albeit recently, on the MOU and the Lux.
I'll put it into not included in the case by case analysis in the table. I mean, I agree that we've looked at it since then, but I can't go to the table, a 150 odd page table or 130 page table and find a review of the memorandum of understanding. I can't even find mention of it as a line item. I mean, it's clearly not a land use decision.
Right. So I think I'm just thinking out loud. It is it's either a separate finding or part of F1. The 2002 MOU and the land use compatibility statement was not reviewed as part of the table analysis below. And then we say something like, however, and I don't know if this is exactly right, however, it was discussed, please see pages X, Y, Z for detailed discussion. Is that
That
more
kind of a
accurate?
paragraph, that kind of a paragraph is already in the introduction.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we can
How
pull that
about-
up and
How about something along the lines of the committee limited its review to the land use decisional history? I could live with that.
as the only finding.
Right. I mean, they sort of say that in F1. We sort of say that already in F1. Maybe just adding a sentence.
I don't know, some of the other documents, I don't know if everything that the county gave us would fit in that definition. If we can, if we just leave it in the introduction, that's probably good enough instead of repeating it here.
So let's
So,
delete the finding.
Excuse me?
So let's
Yeah,
delete that
he's-
finding, get rid of it.
Well, that would work, I think.
If it's in the intro, and I can't remember.
Can we,
I'm pretty sure it is, but go ahead.
Well,
can we
let's look
pull up
for
the
it.
last intro?
We can try.
I'm sorry. That's just a long way to reach back.
And Jeff, in your email this morning on that, I think another missing word happened. What you wrote and what you intended, I think, were different. You are okay with the intro as you last saw it, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Did I say something different than that?
You said you didn't.
Well, I
you,
think
you missed a
Yeah,
word. You should have said you don't
you s-
have any comments, and you said we have
Yeah.
comments.
Oh, well, that would
Yeah.
be wrong. My only comment was adding our opinion on compliance to the table.
Right.
I'm not. Is this it, Ed? This is from
We have to-
your Friday document. Cup
right.
intro revamped
Well,
2523.
you got to stop share and reshare so we can see it.
Oh,
And that one's had a few additions beyond that, I think, but I'm not sure. I think that was, the last one was Friday.
is it sharing?
Yes?
Yeah, we see it
Okay.
now.
Yeah, you're gonna have to tell me. I can't see anything. I've with one little screen.
right.
So does this look like it, Ed?
Keep going. Yeah, that should be it.
So I haven't reviewed this yet. Just
Let's just try to find this one spot. We'll come back and
Mhm.
by and large accept all these changes here unless there's been something since
Or
Friday
just,
afternoon.
scroll down a little bit. Okay,
Oy,
we'll leave that
all right.
alone.
I don't know why that happened. All right, hold on.
Well, let's get it up. I want to make sure this, so we don't have to revisit it. Let's nail it.
I did. Am I on here? I can't tell if I'm. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Sorry, I did send. I know I've put some comments on this, but I'm trying to find them. So if we're going to try to deal with this first, then I need to open my document.
Right now, the sole purpose of looking at this intro is to find the parallel reference to finding 2 that we struck because we believed a comparable statement was made in this document.
And it's
So it must
probably
be
farther
below
down.
this.
Yeah.
It is farther down, yeah.
Okay. Here we
Go
go.
right at it.
Okay. So if Mark and Ed are okay, then with striking the finding, given its treatment here and referencing it, to where the whole meaty discussion will come. That seems like it makes sense.
I'm fine with deleting that finding. And when we
Right.
get to the intro, I have some comments on
Right.
how we're handling the 2002 MOU in the intro, but we can delay that
Yeah,
till we get to there.
Let's get through this stuff here. All right, it looks like Jeff didn't have any comments to F2. So I'm assuming we're good to go correct, Jeff?
Correct.
Okay, so now we're at 4 here.
So I struck or enforce prior because we do enforce land use conditions. We may not monitor them, but if they're brought to our attention, we do enforce them. And I put ongoing and I explained what ongoing meant. And I struck out or any other land use decisions because that's not what we're reviewing here. We're reviewing the landfill.
Well, Inga, so let me just, it's, more than my usual charming personality. This is the opportunity to, really get into full mediator mode. Striking the words or enforce prior, I think is like 180-degree departure from what Vance has said quite clearly. And I'm making this up, but I bet on at least 3 occasions where he has said that. So why we would, what is the basis for striking it here?
Well, if someone made a complaint about noise, there's a condition of approval in multiple land uses for the landfill that the applicant will need to provide a noise study. And we would still enforce that if we had a complaint about noise.
Yeah, but we have a whole discussion somewhere. I don't know if it made it to a finding about what you guys have and have not done, and about, does it come from complaints or not complaints? And so that nuances that statement out. So yes, I guess the reality is, has it enforced the prior land use conditions or not? And then the 150-page document, lays out the debate on that.
And
So
we didn't
Ed,
bring up the
what am I
definition.
missing?
Yeah, we didn't bring up the definition of ongoing versus initial ones. That whole concept wasn't introduced until after we finished. So that wasn't a criteria for reviewing any of our materials. So I'm uncomfortable with what was struck out and what was added, which is, again, it's not what we did.
So there's 2 clauses there. One's past tense and one's, present tense. Did not. Are you comfortable with saying that? Well, yeah, it was in the initial text. Did not actively monitor. God, what did it say? Or
said-
enforce.
We had I put ongoing there, and then we agreed to strike that to many, and then someone struck that out and restored the initial language, and then Inga modified that. But the point I was making is it's not true that Benton County did not and does not actively monitor land use conditions of approval. They do monitor conditions of approval because they check to make sure we comply with a site plan before we get any permits. So those kinds of conditions are monitored and enforced. And ongoing conditions of approval are enforced if in fact the county receives a complaint. I think that the issue is that the county does not go out and actively monitor or enforce those ongoing conditions unless they get a complaint. And that's what I think that's what, and I agree with that. But I think stating that that's all conditions and they don't enforce any of them is way overstating the case.
Well,
Yes,
so
it's very broad.
here's what I think is going on here, because Vance is on recording saying that this is the case, the language that was originally there. Vance has said and chuckled about it when he did it. He said, you know, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble here, but we don't do this and no counties do it. And I think what's happening now is, you know, that's not looking so good when it's in writing, that in fact, the county does not and did not actively monitor or enforce conditions of approval, because that's what the county is relying on to mitigate impacts of land uses. And it doesn't look so good in writing. So I think it's being spun here in a way to remove it from the discussion. And I don't think that's fair or right or accurate.
Well, so I'm concerned on multiple levels now. What happened? I distinctly recall us agreeing to the word many versus ongoing, and you all agreed to that language.
No, it wasn't in here when this document did not include that term. So I added it.
Many?
In fact, no, it didn't have many. You see it wouldn't struck out. I didn't
No,
include it in here.
well,
it's there. It's in the blue strikeout on the second to last line, where it says ongoing many conditions of approval. We did agree to the many.
Has not seen that anymore.
It's there.
It's
Yeah.
run together.
It's there.
in the
It's
blue.
run together in the blue. We had it there.
Go-
We agreed to that. That's fine. That's a compromise. It's fine.
So,
What about the
So-
or enforce?
We do enforce land use conditions of approval all the time.
okay, I'm sorry, Inga, but this is focused on the landfill, not the other situations. And there are levels of nuance here that are different than enforce all the time that need to come out. And somewhere in this document, I thought had more language about this. And do we not somewhere in the body of this document have a more refined version of this about complaints and about this, that, and the other thing?
So that was I don't know what this was, the comment that was made, which I didn't quite understand. And all of this in red was what we came up with
Okay,
on our
so let
last
me,
meeting.
right. So this was my recollection is this is the product of my attempts, not success, my attempt to flesh out this debate last week. It is to put a finer a finer point on this, but I distinctly remember somewhere in there we talked about complaints and the important role they play.
So Sam, that was
Wow.
sorry.
That
Yeah,
was,
I'm really sorry about that.
yeah, now you call me George, call me Ed,
Yeah,
call
okay.
me Vance's
Jeff, I'll
better
call you
looking
Jeff.
good brother.
I'll call you Jeff.
This-
So I think what you're recalling there is, probably version 1, 2, and 3 of the intro language had a discussion about that's where this language initially came from. I could pull it up probably in the original draft of the intro language where it talked about that sentence came from there. And it also talked about that's where it got added, the complaint driven. And, I had typed citizens and Greg Verrett put
Okay.
in residents and industrial. And so you remember correctly, but it was in one of the many, many go versions of the intro language.
I guess I'm getting bothered because we keep going over the same territory to try to get nuances to to things that I think we should just own up to. This is the way it's been. You know, I guess the other side of it is, Inga, show me your noise complaint log and how they've been followed up on. I don't see evidence of some of these things. If you, I know you can go to the website and you can complain about something, but that doesn't do much for me. I'm looking for evidence that something happened. You know, I'm not trying to prove a negative. I'm looking for systems that could prove a positive, I guess.
So can we go back up to the top then and see what we can do with this?
I'd like to leave what we had, and the many was a compromise with Jeff because I didn't have the table that is in the intro right now that shows how many is many. That was commissioned last Monday also.
And I was fine with the struck out blue sentence that said Benton County has not and does not actively monitor compliance with many conditions of approval, but relies on complaint-based enforcement. I'm fine. That's an accurate statement and I'm fine with it.
So what would that look like? I mean, could we type that in to see? So you would basically, okay, so. So it would be all these changes accepted there.
No, it'd be delete the first sentence and keep the second sentence.
Ed and Mark?
Yeah, but I think, that's what we had. Again, I think it's fine because I'm pretty sure we agreed to that the last time.
That's what I thought.
The only thing that's different is giving the references for cup table and stuff like that. And I don't think that's needed in these findings. And I added that stuff. It's an interesting thing that happens is we get to the point of you think you have some consensus, and then the next version comes out and what you thought was there isn't there. So you kind of, like in my case, think, well, maybe I need a bigger hammer to apply to get the point across that, I was looking for this concept. So I'm just trying to recognize in that myself, and maybe we should make sure that we're all working off the same page and not overreacting.
Right. Let's go to 5.
Well, so wait, I'm just trying to figure out
Oh.
how this now is, because what really happens here is that I think the public needs to understand that when they are delegating to the county the role and responsibility for ensuring that an applicant complies with land use requirements, that they don't actually do that. It sort of says this because it says it relies on complaint-based enforcement. But in reality, the county doesn't actively monitor compliance, and I think it's with most, but many's fine, doesn't actively monitor compliance with conditions of approval, nor does it independently act to enforce conditions of approval unless there's a complaint. I think it's subtle. It really, from my perspective, again, people want to wrap their warm and fuzzies around, oh, don't worry, we have conditions of approval that will mitigate the negative impacts. But they should worry because nothing gets done.
So,
And this sort of says that. And if the
You had a
You
few
know.
words in that that you put to clarify it after approval. Could you repeat them, Mark?
yeah, I think what I said was that but the county doesn't independently enforce compliance.
Unless there's a complaint. I'd be fine with that.
Nor does it independently act to enforce. You
I'm not
need
sure
that
what
in-
independently is.
On your own. In other words, if someone is supposed to do something for me and they don't actually do it, I don't just ignore it. I take independent action to ensure that it gets done. That's why, for me, I don't know if independent is the best word, but the county doesn't act on its own to enforce compliance. It only
that-
waits. It
Well,
only
that's-
waits.
That's what this says. So unless there's a complaint.
Yeah, the problem is, whatever. Okay, I am exhausted by this discussion because I just am so frustrated that the county is now dancing away from what they openly admitted to very early on in this process.
That's
And
true.
now we're nuancing it in a way to make it sound like it's not so bad, when in fact it is bad, in my view.
okay. So I think we're at a stage of having lived together long enough that we enjoy an understanding of each other's points of view. I'm going to suggest that for this exercise, that we focus more on proposed language that would work than the reasons for it. I mean, I think it's quite clear what everyone thinks. Everyone knows what everyone else, is advocating for, if you will, but it's really landing on the language we can agree with. So this says Benton County relies on complaints to initiate action to enforce conditions of approval for the landfill. Well, that statement is, and we're all agreeing that's correct. So is there anything else that needs to be added to that, or is F4 in an acceptable state?
Can you accept the changes so we can actually read what it says? Thank you. That's fine.
Okay.
And again,
F6,
if you go look
add-
at, it says it, it relies on complaints to initiate action. And we said it the other way in F3, and we struck out independently. You're just confusing everybody.
I am.
okay, so
No, not Mark's, just,
Well, do we even?
I
need
don't
that?
understand why I don't understand why Mark's comment of independent does not act independently to enforce or whatever you had in there, or nor independently acts to enforce compliance. I guess it should have stopped with any conditions of approval, nor does it proactively act to enforce compliance, period. A complaint is needed to,
Well, just strike the last phrase and leave CP F4 there, because now that says what?
yep, Yep.
Okay, so just
I'm
delete the
fine, I'm
last,
fine with that.
yeah, just delete the last 4 words and then F4 stands on its own.
Catherine, you've been quiet.
I
Oh,
don't know,
it's
did she
Catherine. I
arrive?
didn't see her. I didn't see her.
This process has been exhausting, and I think we're splitting hairs here in a lot of spaces. I hear both sides of some of these conversations, but our job was to review these documents, and it is, this goes all the way back to when I first got on, which was not just the land use documents, but also supporting documents. These are opinions of this subcommittee public members and also opinions of Republic and the county. And I think that they should not be nuanced away or washed away or whitewashed or whichever version of that we want to use. I think it's important to whoever's going to be looking at this to understand that we're struggling with coming to some consensus. And there's a fair amount of disagreement in just these findings alone. So I am frustrated by this process. I also, to Ed's comment, I felt like we had gone through and we're now looking at a different version than what we just spent time on again. And it's been a repeated challenge throughout this process, is I just feel like we keep rehashing the same things that we've gone over. And I'm not sure why that is. So I've probably been best. You should have just left me quiet. That's just where I'm at with where we are sitting right now.
So points taken, and I'm going to try to drive to get the yes on these things. So adding the word landfill to F5 is not controversial.
I think it is because we looked at all of them.
Oh,
We looked at not just the landfill, we looked at the quarry, we looked at power generation.
oh, okay. So we fixed that above, but not here, is what you're
Right.
saying. So, okay, that's done. Now, what's this one about? And I don't know what. I guess Jeff is fine with. He's just adding. These reports are for public information purposes only.
I
Is
don't
that
know
right,
about
Jeff?
that.
That's right.
Okay, it does not review.
Again, that's,
I'm
you know,
curious.
that's out of the scope of what we reviewed. We didn't try to figure out why they were prepared.
Well, and I'm curious, what's the emphasis of that last statement? They're just, I'm not sure of the meaning of why we would add that last sentence. And these were all the types of reports that we were requesting to review along the way that just had to do with the context of, in many cases, the conditions of approval. So I don't think anybody's taking or making a statement that they were anything beyond. I guess I don't understand what the intent of the last sentence is, and not saying that it's good or bad, but maybe Jeff, you've got an opinion about why you would want to add that sentence.
Well, yeah, I think the implication of the way it's written now is that they fell down on the job because they didn't review those, when in fact the conditions were to submit these for public information purposes. So I'm fine with taking that out, but I also don't want to imply that that the county's failure to review those other reports was somehow within its jurisdiction, because it wasn't.
So to be clear, I don't see that statement is an implied statement in any way. So is that a narrative that's coming from another place? Benton County doesn't review those reports. I think that's accurate to say. They are submitted and they are part of that public record, but any failure or any implication of failure, I don't read in this particular, like, I don't know that it's anything other than an acknowledgement, right? The historical record shows that Bend County doesn't review these things, that there have been issues with compliance. And I don't know that we've tied it to a failure as much as just it's a fact of the record. So is
Right.
there a way that you would suggest rewording this, or can you point to where it is implying a failure, to where maybe we can narrate it better so that it might not lean that way? Or, you know, if somebody's perceiving it that way, maybe we should be sensitive to that. If it's not in fact saying that, though, I don't know how we would change it.
You take out my last comment. I've made my point. I think that I agree with you, Catherine. I think that the mere statement itself does not do that. Then there are some other statements that do, and I reserve the right to revisit this issue.
So noted. So help me God. So we'll accept all that.
Well, I had,
Six.
hold on, I had one comment on
Oh,
this
what was
financial
it?
assurance statement. I don't recall us requiring any financial assurance statements in any of the conditions of approval. That was something that maybe in
I thought you get documents.
some of the other,
I
excuse me?
thought you get documents, the county gets,
We may, but
That,
it's not anything that we would put in a condition of approval, and I don't recall that being in any of them that I read.
Isn't it required in the franchise that something?
I think that's probably what it is.
Because the franchise ordinance requires a financially capable provider. So I think
yeah, but
that,
it's also required by DEQ. It's part of the
That's
DEQ
correct.
permit.
right.
So you should
the
be getting them a couple of ways.
But you're calling it out quite clearly there as if we would not review financials. And I'm guessing the county, someone is going to review some financials. It's not part of our land use review.
Well, here's the chain of logic as I'm understanding it, not for advocacy, understand it. There is a condition of approval that says Republic has to comply with DEQ's conditions and requirements. One of those is a financial assurance statement. Therefore, the logic that I'm hearing is that is part of a condition of approval. Is that the logic chain? Not that it's right or wrong, but
Right.
that's what you're saying, Ed, correct?
It's embedded in requiring getting the information from DEQ on the permit. As is the emergency plans.
As is a site development plan, all those things.
So I would support that we keep it for those reasons. I think there's other things that we'd kicked around in our conversation and adding to this particular statement. But these seem to give a nice set of examples.
All right, let's go on to F8 here. Anyone have any objection to that?
No. I don't rather.
Nope.
Can't speak for
Okay.
everybody.
No one seemed to have any objections to 8.
Nope.
I do not.
Go. So Inga, you're the red, correct? So let's tell us about this.
Let's see, when Penn County issued. Did not ensure. So this was, I think this went back to what we talked about last week. Those things were advisory, so we would not review to see if they've got their permits unless it was a requirement of the condition that they submit that permit before we, as it says, before we gave them final approval. It was just a very broad statement, so I was trying to tailor it down a little bit.
Lady and gentlemen,
Yeah, so, again, this is one of the ones that I'm trying to point out to people that I guess I just don't understand what the point is for putting an advisory condition into a land use decision for which there is no mechanism nor any obviously concern on the county's part as to whether or not the applicant actually carries through with the advisory condition. What's the point? If it
Mark,
says
focus on the fix. Focus on the fix to this sentence. We know
leave
your
it,
position.
leave it the way it was. I don't again try to dance around this by saying, well, it's not required to be submitted in the condition of approval. It's just you should go get a permit. It doesn't also say get a permit and give it to me. So leave it the way it was is my fix.
And is there a supporting recommendation later on that says, and this something that solves this finding?
I think that there is, but I can't remember. We've looked at so many different documents. If there's not, it's certainly easy enough to craft.
I
Right.
think there was something that said no more advisory.
Well, there is a reason to include those advisory conditions to put an applicant on notice that there are other conditions that they may have to comply with as part of their permit. So
But doesn't that create a risk then for the county because you didn't tell me I had to get all of these permits. You only told me I had to get these. If I were working in the planning department, I would say, oh, we better list everything that they have to get. Otherwise, they can look to us and say, you didn't tell me I had to get that. So
I guess to me, findings are statements of fact. And the suggested additional language or the reasons for not doing it. And I don't know that I haven't looked at the proposed findings with that lens in mind, but I don't think we include things that say, and that wasn't, and that you shouldn't be surprised by this finding because they weren't required to.
No, it was supposedly just a statement of fact. Looked at the historical documents, and this is a fact from those documents.
But they are advisory conditions, so the conditions themselves did not require us to get those permits. Now, there's a legitimate issue about whether they should, but it does imply that the county is not enforcing its condition when in fact the condition itself doesn't require us to get those. So I think the way Inga has rewritten it is a statement of fact.
This is not this wasn't written on the basis advisory. Advisory was one part of it, but it just said being granted necessary operating permits from multiple state agencies.
So let me try to thread the needle here. So it's okay. There's got to be a way to do this. To make sure the advisory nature of it.
Just don't go into the advisory part of it. That's a rabbit hole. It's part of it, but it's just if the county said you need to get an operating permit for the landfill, it doesn't have a mechanism for checking that they've received a completed approved permit from DEQ. There's no record mechanism in the historical record. It's like, yeah, and put it on, the log for, the record for, note on the record for this project that the DEQ permit has been received. We didn't see procedures of that nature, and we weren't given those. So we're trying to just say,
Yeah.
that's not there. And then later on, when we recommend, well, you're added.
Okay, so here's how
Yeah.
I think we can fix this here. Unfortunately, you could say in that second clause, the county did not. The county advises the applicant about those required permits, but does not check to see if they were procured. That appears to be a balanced statement, a better balanced statement.
Yeah, but that's actually not true for all the state agency permits. We are required to submit all of our DEQ permits and all of the DEQ reports as part of the conditions, and we do. So they do.
That's a separate issue.
Well, except that it says state permits. That could be DEQ permits.
Yeah, it could be, but this is focused on the county taking action, not what you can do. We're not questioning whether you did it. We're questioning whether the county who says go do it knows that you did it, and it even keeps track of that you did it. And then if you didn't do it, takes action. It's nothing impugning Republic's efforts to get permits. It is impugning the county's ability to track whether or not what they've asked for actually gets done.
Well, they won't let us proceed until we get the DEQ permits and then we've submitted them to them. So at least with regard to the DEQ permits, that's not true.
Okay.
Well, if you can add, with the exception, we're procured by the applicant with the exception of the DEQ permits, which are so we're accepting it for you to look at it, just so you can see if that works.
That's fine with me.
Ed, Mark, Catherine.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I would change the tense of the sentence because it's now all past tense. And I think this is a real situation. It would be when it issues and does not check, but I'm fine generally with the way it's written.
I'm okay with what Mark suggested.
Well, are we doing something to the verb tense? Because I see that verb
It
tense,
should- it
we
should
use
be-
it quite specifically. Like in F11, we said did not and does not. But before, it looks like above, it's been changed all to past tense in most cases, right?
No, I thought it was, I thought there was still a mix of
Yeah,
past and
Yeah, we
present.
I think they should.
Well,
I'm
this
fine
is-
with past and present as long as it's clear.
Well, this
And,
is just related to the landfill, so, and those were all past tense land use approvals.
That's fine, whatever.
Okay. So take out the struck out blue language.
Could I just comment? I keep reading it as we're updating a little bit here. It says a land use approval. I think it's off the screen now. There are certainly more than singular. So should that be the land use approvals?
Yep.
Thank you, Catherine.
And maybe even the landfill land use. Well, no, that's not accurate either. So
Yeah.
just the,
The land use, I'm saying?
Yep.
I'm okay with, yeah.
Okay.
Do you mind scrolling it back up just again
Oh,
so I can
no, sorry.
just do one last final read? Thanks. Okay, thank you.
All right, our friend in the last finding, F10. And the light
mhm. A lot
blue
of this is
here,
influenced by the neighborhood tour and the number of neighbors that just have given up on trying to work with the county and actually with DEQ because the systems don't work. They've called. One person in particular told me she called and then she tested 2 weeks later whether there was any record of her call, and
right?
the person could not find any record of her call.
Right. So who's turquoise?
In this case, that's me. The blue, the turquoise.
Okay.
I did it. I double dipped.
I see. Trying to disguise yourself as
Yeah.
more than one person.
Sorry,
Uh-huh.
I impersonated you, Inga.
Yeah.
But I was getting very confused by the way this was tracking changes. So
No
when I
problem.
went through it was readily accessible, transparent, and I think Catherine, you helped out with this. But and known to the people need to know that there's a system and they need to trust the system. That something's in
So-
place.
I don't think anyone has, I'm not hearing any objection to the first 3 lines of finding 10. We'll go to the editorial comment in a minute, but does anyone have any objections to F10 sans the comment, which will, yeah. Hearing none, you can accept that. And is the editorial comment, was that just for us? Or is that something you're suggesting go into the finding?
No, it was probably 7:30 at night. And
Right.
it was, how do you get the message out?
Yeah,
And
this is
somebody
the
said, well,
seven,
we need to do the Ghostbuster thing, put a sign out there.
So
Right.
could we maybe change it from editorial comment to an example of, a complaint mechanism, for example, might lead better than editorial comment. If we want to leave this in the remainder of the document.
that would be in a recommendation, I would suggest, is that what that system, or what do we call it? Yeah, tracking system would
I would
look
take it
like,
out.
would be in a recommendation.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, good stuff.
Okay, so before we move on to key recommendations, I would like to just propose that the key findings, we need to look at them. They're, in my view, semi-disorganized now in terms of their thought process, and it would be good to reorder them so that, like, for example, we just had this one here down at the end that talks about a complaint system, and the complaint stuff is talked about 5 or 7 findings earlier. So
Right.
organizing them in a way that is more logical or direct or succinct, however you want to say it. And I'm happy to take a shot at that for people to propose to shoot
Okay.
at. So
Okay, so I'm suggesting we get through all of these because that's what the work group is for sure needs to see. And then I think we can make short shrift and do exactly what you said. So I had the same reaction to the one we just added. It seems it fits better up above. And, but I'm making a note that we need to talk about the intro and we need to talk about the order.
thank you.
And yeah, all right. So thinking out loud, this is the mediator in me. I understand we still have Mishigash with the 2002 MOU and whether or not the site plan and narratives are regulatory or not. I think the recommendation could say something ascertain this currently there is a difference of opinion as to whether they are regulatory.
So Sam, can I ask a question? And
Yeah, of course.
are you proposing to leave the comments as they have been stated here with this adjustment to the R1 statement?
I don't know yet. I'm trying to probably not. I'm trying to come up with a recognition that we're not in agreement and then a reference to where this is discussed. Because
So
again, the
what-
recommendation.
I think
Go
this
ahead.
is addressed in the introduction as one of the issues. And it points to the legal section for information. I would remove R1 totally.
But isn't there a recommendation that you want this? Well, why is it a recommendation then?
I don't think we put it in there.
Well, where did this come from, Inga? Do you remember?
I believe it was the table of overall recommendations that is now at the end of the subcommittee
That could well be
plan.
it. That could well be it, because you did a good job of transporting those. I just don't, or translating those, or moving them in. I just don't remember it.
So Ed, with that comment and knowing, we've had some of these conversations, I'm going to toss this one out for deliberation also. So from my perspective, I think the 1983, the 83-07, so the 1983 land use, and the versions of the 8307 documents, as well as the context that was built around this was a very important. So again, assuming that the majority of the folks looking at this have not had the benefit of all of the reading that we have done and review that we have done of these processes, the 8307 seems to be a very important year in the history of the landfill and the conditions of approval. And I would be more comfortable just acknowledging that we have we have not come to a consensus on what that narrative and site
Got it.
plan and such. We haven't come to any conclusion, and it isn't necessarily our space to do so, but that we have a differing set of opinions. And I think they're important actually to illuminate that difference, because it seems that somewhere that should be resolved if need be. And I don't know that it even needs to be. And same thing with the MOU here, is that we're just from a differing set of opinions based on the reviews that we have done. I would be hesitant just to omit this.
No, you're
Because-
right. You're right, because one of these, one of the documents refers to the condition of the land once the landfill is closed. And that's important. It's extremely important.
Dance with me, please. I think I can get us there. If you, it would look like, I don't think the word is ascertain, but I think it's determine. Determine if the site plan narrative included in the application were regulatory conditions. The landfill was required to follow. Currently, there's a difference of opinion as to whether they are regulatory. Regardless, the recommendation is to, it's regardless, I'm sorry, Inga, it's actually, take out those three words. I was talking to myself.
Okay.
Either way, so type in either way, comma, this issue a policy decision should be made on this, on these requirements moving forward. That's what you're trying to get at. You're saying, you're saying they're not. It's somewhat academic at this point. The recommendation is you are recommending they should be in the future, is the subcommittee's recommendation.
Oh,
That they should be in the future.
I'm not sure if they're moot anymore. I think,
Okay.
I think it's, yeah, I guess from my perspective, legal action is possible. There
Okay,
are
so-
conditions of approval and they're not being met.
So my editorial comments, aren't in there, which is what you are appropriately responding to. This preserves the opportunity if someone wants to make a legal decision. But
So-
this is go ahead.
No, you go ahead, excuse me.
So this is the essence of a recommendation. We are saying that it's in dispute whether they were or were not required. But regardless if they were or were not in the past, going forward, you're saying, at least the three of you are saying that they should be regulatory conditions.
So can I suggest
Right?
that we take the word? Sorry,
No, I'm finished.
I'll let you finish that dance.
No, I'm finished dancing. I shouldn't
Okay.
start in the first place. I pour at it.
So I would, the word policy leaves me a little, I'm
Right.
not sure that that's our best. So maybe a determination. We started with determine. Can we use it again? Either way, a determination should be made on these requirements.
Yep.
Moving forward seems like a reasonable phrase, but perhaps that determination gets us awake because I'm not confident that that's a policy necessarily. It might be. But I am still going to stand very firmly on, I think we should keep both of these sets of comments in here intact as they have been submitted, because it's easy to read a document with a bunch of recommendations that say, hey, we need to, come up with this determination, but having no way to wade into the stream, so to speak, the door isn't really opened except it's just that recommendation. And I think that these comments just show that, here's really, if I was going to follow this trail from that recommendation, CUP-R1, I wouldn't know where to go. Whereas these comments, I think, open the door for that consideration from where Republic is coming from, where the public members of this committee are coming from. And again, it's likely not our conclusion to make, but here are the things that we are considering. So I'm going to really encourage, at least for how I feel about the work that we put into these comments. And I know that the work that we put into the 8307, which really was one of the most important and influential land use decisions on the front end of this process, I think we need to leave that doorway open. And if it takes, these 2 short paragraphs to do that, to help the audience and the reader, and knowing that this ultimately is going to go to our planning commissioners, our commissioners, I'm just going to encourage that.
So nothing I want to make clear, nothing I'm saying implies that these aren't important and should be considered. I am suggesting that with all of these, to the extent that important distinctions like this need to be made, they should refer to the body of the report for a further explanation. But a recommendation in and of itself is just that. And it's important that there's an argument, a different point of view over it, but let's refer to them where it's more robustly laid out. So my predicate question is there a place in these documents where this is more, the pro and cons more robustly laid out? Because what we have here in purple and turquoise doesn't do that. It just is repeating the reasons for the that there's a disagreement.
I think if you read the second turquoise paragraph, it says C 8307 analysis supporting documents. Those were a whole bunch. Mark was the author. This, Sam, you may recall when we had the dispute about whether or not we were even allowed to look at the supporting materials. You decided that it was okay to look at them. The subcommittee asked Mark to really take a thorough look at it to see what they mean. And that analysis was, with supporting documents, was was brought to the members in December. So that whole reference in those, Mark, I don't recall whether it was 4 or 5 pages of documents. That's out there to help do more than just what's in the table.
Yeah, I think there was a 3-page analysis and then 5 or 6 pages of excerpted portions of the decision documents.
So it's in both the standard table and a special in-depth analysis.
Just a second here, I think I might have another subcommittee starting here. Let me look quickly.
If it's close to 5, you probably do.
Yeah,
And
all right,
I
so,
I also have a hard stop at 5. So
right. So all I am suggesting here is generally comments, pro and con, do not go into a recommendation.
Right.
But it is important to reference, or as someone suggested here, make a dynamic link to that portion of the analysis. And we should do that wherever there is a disagreement. And
Mhm.
but Jeff,
Well, then,
does your
Mhm.
go ahead, Jeff, does your comment included in the proposed link they are suggesting?
No, it's not in the table. This is something new. Because it's,
Okay.
uh,
So I'm suggesting that the so-called Republic comment be added to that same table that's being referenced there. And I think you can link it, both of those to it. And that's the more robust paper trail that gets them.
no, what Mark did was not part of the table either. It's separate documents.
Well, then it
Oh.
refers to a separate document. So one link to the table, one link to the separate document.
Well, here's what I'm having a problem with, the going back and changing the table. It's kind of like opinion of the day. Let's put it in, let's put it in. That's an awful huge, it's a very large administrative problem. I think you really need to consider freezing it when we were all working on it, which is essentially the 1st of February. Because every time some new thought of whether something's valid or not, it's going to go back to it has to be my comment in the table. But you didn't think
So-
of it until 2 months later.
Yeah.
It gets the chicken and egg. In
Yeah,
engineering, it's called freezing the design, and then you make some other
Right.
adaptations later and just say, hey, after this was put in, this comment was put in, and your standalone comment from that's in the table right now is just recognizes that is what you offered as of that date. Subsequent to that date, you have these new opinions.
Right. I'm totally hip with that. There's a simple fix, I think, is that Republic stuff then goes as a Republic comment to the memo that's referred to in yellow. That
So
shows
point-
both sides of the equation. So you have Mark's analysis of 8307.
You're
then
missing the
Republic's
point about a breakpoint. We did this back in December to shore it up. It was available to everybody. There was no reaction to it. And then all of a sudden, whoopee, it doesn't count. We've got this new legal theory. It's got to get handled separately.
That's the MOU. Is the new legal theory, right?
no,
Mike,
it's this.
Jeff Condit.
I am sure that I added a comment why we did not believe the after the fact narrative was not intended to be regulatory. I think that comment is embedded in the document. If it's not, I can draft up something about why we believe that.
And
So
that's
can-
my point.
just-
You freeze it at one point in time, otherwise we keep going, oh, I really meant to say back in January, I really meant to say it this way. And it
Well-
will just never end.
Yeah. And I get the process fatigue. I'm feeling your pain because it's mine as well. But this MOU kind of bounced forward here. And, remember where we started this discussion was to key up a recommendation and refer people cleanly to where the more robust pro and con lives. And I think that that's the sole goal here. We arguing about what happened back then and forward isn't going to get us anywhere if it's creating an impasse for us now. And I'm just trying to come up with a place where the public can see both sides of it. And whatever the easiest and cleanest place to do that is all I'm proposing, despite my specific brainstorming suggestions earlier.
So Sam, can I just make a comment on a couple things here? So I support what Ed is proposing, that we freeze that document where it was at, because a tremendous amount of shift and change and, updates, and then sometimes updates aren't happening, has happened since that end of December. That 154 pages. Okay. So my
Agreed.
next question is about what we're looking at right now, which are the key recommendations, and how I view this document is in part an executive summary kind of narrative that will go along with all of the other subcommittee recommendations that what we reviewed at the Planning Commission. Two things. So we went through and responded to comments, not only responded to, but also added comments to these recommendations, the public members of this committee, and we spent a fair amount of time there. I don't know that I'm comfortable moving those comments out of this document, knowing that the reader that's looking at the executive committee, or excuse me, the executive summary, if you will, is likely to go read 154 more pages plus whatever else we have added. And my preference is that we reflect both Republic's comments and their perspectives right here in this document, even if that's not traditional, and that we reflect the public members' comments right here too. They are at least near, I think this is one of the bigger ones, but when you get down to this other set of documents, unless we're going to pull them out of all of these recommendations, I think you're literally taking the meat right off of, we're going to be left with the bones of recommendations.
Okay, let me just pause, and I'm only being direct because I really literally have to get on the other call. It is not, I am not opposing what you guys reinforce as your goal. I am simply suggesting now, as my last shot, that they be findings. That to the extent there is a disagreement on whether it was or wasn't regulatory, you move that up to a finding that says the issue of whether or not it's regulatory is in dispute, and you can say the public members think couple, 2-3 sentences, Republic thinks 2 or 3 sentences, and then leave this key recommendation clean. It's my beef is with the placement of it in a recommendation.
So just to be clear, then you're suggesting that we move these comments forward in the document, earlier into the document in that findings section.
I think they should be cleaned up a little bit, but for instance, the stuff that's in yellow isn't specific enough to alert the reader as to the public members' points of view. But
you already took out with what it said. It said public members before it had a paragraph.
I didn't take it out. I don't know where it went. Okay.
Oh, shoot. I thought I rejected it. Why is it?
So I need to step just a moment to grab a call, but I don't expect it to be long. Are we going to continue this meeting beyond our 5 o'clock timeframe with those of us that will remain? Or are we going to, when we lose Sam and Mark, just stop the meeting?
Yeah, I
Um,
have to hop off to need to make
Okay.
dinner for my dad. I'm at his house.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, then I think the remaining task is how many recs are there? Oh, wow, there's quite a few. We're never going to get them done. So I think it is, when can we reconvene to try to nail these down? Nail the rest of them down.
Well, we had that problem, which is why we're meeting today. We had a problem finding another time and day to meet.
Mhm.
Uh, I've got time tomorrow up until 3. But after that, I'm out of pocket, and Wednesday I'm driving back to Oregon.
So I'm available tomorrow, just not from 12 to 1.
I'm
It looks
available
like-
tomorrow.
Oh, wait,
Through-
I'm sorry. Sorry, Jeff. I take that back. I'm only available until 12. I was looking at March, so excuse me. And I'm sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No worries. I'm available tomorrow until 3.
I have a 10:30 and a 1:50 tomorrow, so I could potentially get on the phone at 10:30. So that would probably be, that probably could work till about noon.
Oh,
So
you mean you're
I-
free at 10:30? I'm sorry, I didn't get.
Yeah, I actually have
Oh.
to go somewhere at 10:30, but once I get there, I don't have no obligation. I don't have a meeting. I've got an appointment that I've got to deliver something at 10:30. So I could get on the phone at 10:30 or possibly even earlier, 10 o'clock or something.
Well, let's do 10:30 because I'm appearing before the board until about 10:30. So let's pencil in, if I tracking this.
You're gonna have to do it
10:30.
without me. I've got a public hearing on an appeal that starts sometime 11 or soon thereafter as it may be heard.
At the board. Is that
Yeah,
that board thing on the agenda?
yep.
So we don't know for sure yet if it's going to be heard.
On mine, it's definitely gonna be heard, but I
Okay.
just don't know what exact time. I mean, I can do it before 11, anytime before 11, because that's the public hearings start at 11, so I'm good then.
Well, at least let's join us at 10:30, and then if I have to take over editing the then existing screen, I will do that, and you can watch me suffer with the keyboard. So if you could
Okay.
send out an invite between 10:30 and 1, and hopefully we'll be done sooner. And then send me this, all of us, this current draft. And maybe if I have time after my next subcommittee, I'll see if I can make some suggestions to get to yes.
Will do.
Thank you, everyone. We're
All
getting
right,
there.
thank
We
you.
really are. Take
All
care.
right, talk.
Bye-bye.
All right, night.
Good night.